Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English and Inspire.
I'm Ava.
And I'm Leo.
Congratulations on completing day 10. Today is day 11 of our 30 days English speaking challenge.
So imagine you walk into this, beautifully lit restaurant in London. You sit down, you confidently order an entree, fully expecting a massive, sizzling steak.
Oh boy, I can see where this is going.
Right. But instead, the waiter hands you this tiny, delicate little salad. And then as you pick up your fork to eat it, you notice the table next to you is staring at your hands like you're wielding some kind of medieval weapon.
Yikes, that is basically a nightmare.
It really is. You haven't spoken a single word of bad English, yet somehow you've just completely failed the assignment.
So today, for this deep dive, we are decoding the absolute minefield that is dining out in an English-speaking environment.
And it really is the ultimate real-world test for you, the listener. Because, well, this isn't just about memorizing a menu, right? Or knowing how to ask for a glass of water. Exactly. We've got a whole stack of sources we're pulling from today. We're looking at AI language guides like TalkPal and Practice Me and Espresso English. But we also pulled strict corporate dining etiquette training materials, and even this really deep historical dive into table manners from Wikipedia.
Yeah, and looking at all of that together, a really clear picture emerges. Dining out is fundamentally about decoding unwritten social scripts.
Unwritten scripts.
It's about navigating these invisible cultural landmines that can honestly very easily turn a fantastic meal into a highly stressful situation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we even, open a menu, we have to talk about the fundamental psychology of an English transaction.
Definitely.
Because I've noticed this with so many learners, you can construct a grammatically flawless sentence, but in a restaurant setting, it can still sound completely abrasive. Why does a perfectly correct sentence ruin the mood?
Well, it's because we often confuse grammatical accuracy with cultural politeness. In a service setting, there's this underlying structure happening. The sources actually refer to this as the universal script.
The universal script, so it's the same everywhere.
Pretty much. It honestly doesn't matter if you're at a late-night fast food counter or a 3-Michelin-star restaurant. The interaction generally follows 4 predictable beats.
Okay, what's the first one?
First is the greeting, just establishing basic human contact.
Right, a quick hello.
Exactly. Second is ordering, which is stating your actual need. Third, you have clarifying questions.
Like, for here or to go? Or how do you want that cooked?
Spot on. And finally, the fourth beat is paying and thanks.
So the secret is realizing that the server isn't just striking up a random conversation. It's a formula.
Yes.
And once you realize it's a script, it stops being this terrifying blank canvas interaction. It just becomes a fill-in-the-blank exercise.
Exactly. But, the tension comes from how you fill in those blanks. And that brings us to what the sources call the politeness ladder.
The politeness ladder. I love that visual.
Yeah, so at the absolute bottom rung of this ladder is the phrase, I want, as in, I want a coffee.
Grammatically, that's perfectly fine, though, right?
It is. Subject, verb, object. But socially, to a native speaker, it lands as incredibly blunt. It's demanding, and honestly, it sounds almost childish.
Wow. Okay.
But as you climb the ladder, you reach casual phrases like, I'll have, or maybe I'll take.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah, and a step higher is the standard, can I get?
Yeah.
But at the very top, the really polished, bulletproof standard is, I'd like, or could I have?
I have to push back a little on why saying I want is so stigmatized, because I know it trips up so many language learners.
Oh, totally.
Like in a lot of languages, stating a direct desire is just efficient. It's not inherently rude. It's just stating a fact. I want the soup. You're at a restaurant to get soup.
Right, it's perfectly logical.
But in English, well, I like to think of saying I want as using a heavy hammer to open a door. Yeah, like, sure, it gets the job done, you'll probably get the soup. But you're going to dent the wood and totally ruin the social mood in the process.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Whereas a polite, could I have, that acts like a perfectly fitted key. It opens the door effortlessly without breaking anything.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The key doesn't force the issue, it just requests entry. And, if we stick with your key analogy, the oil that makes the lock turn smoothly is adding please and thank you.
Ah, of course.
Yeah, our sources emphasize that adding please to the end of a request actually does way more heavy lifting than the verb you chose.
So even if you mess up the grammar, please saves you.
Exactly. Even if you panic and use a slightly clunky phrase, it's instantly softened and forgiven if it's wrapped in a warm please. It signals respect for that social contract.
It really is the ultimate linguistic safety net. But even if you have the perfectly oiled key, you still need to know which door you're unlocking. And this is where regional quirks make the actual vocabulary of menus completely wild.
Oh, it completely fractures depending on where you are. The most prominent divide our sources highlight is between the UK and the US.
Let's get into that. Start at the beginning of the meal.
Sure, so in the UK, that first lighter dish, maybe a clear soup or some pâté, is called a starter.
Right?
But in the US, it's an appetizer, which culturally tends to be a bit heavier. It's often meant for the whole table to share, like buffalo wings or nachos.
Got it. But the real trap for learners, going back to my opening scenario, is the word entree.
Oh, that one is an absolute nightmare.
The confusion is built right into the word itself.
It really is.
Yeah.
In the United States, the entree is your main course. It's the big event, the largest plate of food. But in the UK and in many other parts of the world, an entree stays true to its French origin, which means entrance. So it refers to a starter or a small dish served before the main course.
So if you order an entree in London expecting a massive ribeye, you are going to be severely disappointed when a tiny salad shows up.
Extremely disappointed.
And speaking of confusing terminology, we really can't ignore the coffee chains, specifically Starbucks. You walk in, and the standard English sizings, small, medium, large, is just completely obliterated.
Oh, completely replaced by their own unique lexicon. It's wild.
Right.
You have the short, which is 8 ounces, though they rarely even list that on the menu.
Right.
Then tall, which is counterintuitively, they're small at 12 ounces.
Makes no sense.
I know. Then grande is the medium at 16 ounces. Venti is large, which means 20 in Italian.
Yeah.
And finally, the trenta, which is a massive 30-ounce cup just for iced drinks.
The irony here is just staggering to me. Like, grande literally translates to large in Italian, right?
Yes, exactly.
But in the U.S. corporate coffee world, it's medium.
Yeah.
And a Trenta is practically a bucket of liquid.
It really is a bucket.
But what really fascinates me isn't just the words themselves, it's why they do it. It feels like this corporate lexicon is acting as a walled garden.
A walled garden? How
Yeah.
so?
They invent a language to make you feel like an insider once you learn it, but it completely alienates someone who's just trying to get a caffeine fix. If you're a learner, how are you supposed to navigate this without freezing in panic at the register?
Well, the really empowering insight from the language guides is this. You actually have the power to refuse the walled garden.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you don't have to use their invented words at all. If you just confidently say, "I'd like a medium latte," please, the barista will know exactly what you mean.
They just translate it for you.
Exactly. They'll just hit the grande button on their screen. You don't need to learn a microlanguage just to buy a coffee. Standard English always works.
Okay, that is incredibly reassuring. So, navigating a walled garden of menu sizes is one thing, but that whole universal script of politeness completely fractures when a cleaner's physical health is on the line.
That's a very good point.
Because sometimes communication isn't just about getting the right size cup, it's about trying to save a meal that's gone wrong, or, preventing a medical emergency. How do you adapt this soft, polite script when the stakes are suddenly high?
This is a vital pivot. We just spent all this time on the politeness ladder and softening your language with, "Could I please have?"
Right.
But when it comes to severe dietary restrictions or allergies, you need to throw that indirect politeness completely out the window.
Just dish it entirely.
Yes. Clarity must become your absolute top priority. You do not say, "I'd prefer not to have nuts if it isn't too much trouble."
Because that's too ambiguous.
Exactly. You say directly and clearly, "I have a severe nut allergy. Does this contain nuts?"
So using the word allergy is key.
Yes, using the specific word allergy acts as a non-negotiable trigger word for the kitchen. It forces them to change gloves, check labels, and take the request seriously.
Total shift in tone, efficiency over elegance. But what about less severe modifications? Like, what if I'm not allergic? I just don't want my salad drowning in ranch dressing.
For standard modifications, the magic phrase outlined in the sources is "on the side."
On the side?
Yeah. If you ask for the dressing on the side, it arrives in a separate little dish. You maintain control over your food without disrupting the kitchen's workflow too much.
Okay, but what if the food arrives and it's just objectively wrong? It's ice cold, or they brought fish instead of chicken. I know so many learners, and honestly, a lot of native speakers too, who feel a huge amount of anxiety about this.
Oh, absolutely. The anxiety is real.
I've sat with friends who would literally rather eat cold food than speak up. Isn't it inherently rude to send food back?
It is not inherently rude at all, provided you follow the right formula. The psychology of the server is key here. They generally want you to have a good experience because it reflects on their tip and the restaurant's reputation.
True.
So the sources offer a very clear structure to handle this without causing a scene. You just use a soft opener, you make eye contact, smile slightly, and say, "Sorry to bother you, but this dish is cold. Could I get a fresh one?"
You know, I think of it like returning a defective sweater at a clothing store.
A sweater.
Yeah, you paid for the sweater, you expect it to have 2 sleeves and no holes. If it's torn, you take it back. It should be right. But, crucially, you don't need to yell at the cashier about it.
Because they didn't knit the sweater.
Exactly. You just politely explain the defect, and they exchange it. The restaurant dynamic is exactly the same. You're paying for a hot meal. You shouldn't feel guilty for requesting what you paid for, as long as you treat the server as a partner in fixing the problem, not the enemy.
Perfectly said. Keep it calm, state the objective problem, and make a clear request for how to fix it.
Okay, so you've successfully navigated the menu, modified the dish, it arrived hot, it's the right food. You used your spoken words perfectly.
Yes.
But what are you doing with your hands while you eat it? Let's move from the spoken scripts to the silent physical language of table manners, because the physical etiquette is just as complex, if not more so.
It really is. And our sources, especially that historical dive from Wikipedia and the corporate training guides, they reveal something fascinating.
Oh.
To understand modern table manners, you have to look at how they evolved. The very concept of a scheduled meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, likely traces all the way back to ancient hunter-gatherer societies.
Wow, really? That far back?
Yeah, food had to be brought back to the camp and shared communally at specific times to ensure survival and fairness.
Right, but sitting down at the same time is one thing. The rigid rules, the intense etiquette we see today about elbows and napkins, that has to be a much more recent invention.
Yes, it is. A massive philosophical shift happened during the Renaissance. Previously, manners were governed by courtesy, which literally meant how you behaved at the royal court to gain favor with a king or a noble.
Court easy. That makes sense.
Right. But during the Renaissance, it shifted towards civility, which was framed as a universal standard expected of any educated person. And King Louis XIV of France weaponized this perfectly.
Weaponized manners.
He used incredibly complex, ever-changing dining rituals to control the nobility. If you wanted political power, you had to eat with the king, and you had to know the exact rules of how to hold your goblet or cut your meat so you didn't offend him. It was basically a test of loyalty and attention.
What confuses me, though, is how these strict rules meant for a king's court made their way into the homes of everyday people. Why would a middle-class merchant in the 18th century care how Louis XIV folded his napkin?
Because of social mobility. As the middle class, the bourgeoisie, gained wealth, they lacked titles of nobility. So they used manners as a tool for social climbing.
To prove they belong.
Exactly. It became a way to signal your education and your worthiness to be in elite circles. They actually adhered to these rules even more strictly than the nobility because they were terrified of making a blunder and losing their newfound social standing.
That's fascinating.
This anxiety caused an absolute explosion of etiquette books being published. People were just desperate to learn the right way to eat.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I was reading through that Wikipedia source, and it mentioned the history of the fork. It took 800 years for the fork to be widely adopted in Europe.
I know, it's a wild timeline.
800 years. Why did it take almost a millennium for humans to decide that stabbing our food with a little metal pitchfork was a good idea?
Well, for centuries, the fork was seen as an unnatural, almost suspicious affectation. People were perfectly happy using their hands, spoons, and knives.
So why the resistance?
To understand the hesitation, think about how people today might react to someone wearing a bulky VR headset at a dinner table.
Oh, wow. It feels isolating, right?
Exactly. It puts a barrier between the person and the shared reality of the room. The fork felt exactly like that. As the concept of civility grew, there was this push to create walls around the individual diner. You shouldn't touch communal food, and eventually you shouldn't even touch your own food.
So the fork was a wall.
The fork became the ultimate barrier between the animalistic bodily function of eating and the civilized rational mind. But it took 800 years for society to accept that level of detachment.
That brings up a really profound point. If manners are just these artificial evolving rules, if it took us 800 years just to accept a fork, why do we feel so deeply, intensely judged when we break them? Like, why does dropping a piece of bread or using the wrong spoon at a corporate dinner feel like a moral failure?
Because At a primal psychological level, dining is about community and belonging. The sources highlight that the primary punishment for breaking etiquette isn't a fine or going to jail, it's social exclusion.
Social exclusion.
Yeah. When you violate table manners, you are subtly signaling to the group that you aren't one of them. Or worse, that you don't respect their norms enough to learn them. That fear of rejection is hardwired into our DNA from those ancient hunter-gatherer days. If you were excluded from the communal meal, you didn't survive.
So to avoid that deep-seated fear of rejection, let's lay out the modern corporate and formal dining rules from our training sources. How do we build these walls correctly today if we're at a high-stakes business dinner?
It starts with posture. You sit upright. Your feet are flat on the floor, not wrapped around the chair legs.
Hey.
Elbows are strictly off the table while eating, as that implies leaning in too aggressively or treating the table like a trough.
Okay, posture, got it.
And you order simple foods. Nothing messy, no spaghetti, nothing with bones that requires you to use your hands. You want to maintain a clean, controlled image.
And the napkin, it feels like there is a whole separate silent language just for the napkin.
There absolutely is. The moment you sit down, the napkin goes on your lap, unfolded. Now, if you need to leave the table temporarily, say, to use the restroom, you place the napkin on the seat of your chair.
Not on the table.
No, on the seat. That silent gesture tells the server, I'm coming back, don't clear my plate. When the meal is entirely over, you loosely fold it. Do not ball it up and place it to the left of your plate.
And you can also use your cutlery to send silent messages, right? I love this part. It's like secret agent communication with the waiter.
It is. When you're resting between bites and just talking, your knife and fork go on the plate somewhat apart, often in an inverted V shape.
Okay.
But to signal you are completely finished, you place your knife and fork together on the plate, parallel, pointing either at the 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock position, with the fork tines facing up.
And that just tells the server they can clear your plate.
Exactly, without you ever having to interrupt your conversation to tell them.
The silent choreography of dinner. It's beautiful, but also a little exhausting to memorize.
It can be.
But of course, those walls of civility, the way we hold a fork in the West, is just one philosophical lens. What happens when we zoom out globally and look at how the fundamental philosophy of dining shifts?
The rules don't just change. In many cases, they completely flip based on different cultural values.
Give me an example.
Let's look at India. There, customs are deeply tied to Ayurvedic principles of hygiene and respect. You eat with your right hand. The left hand is traditionally associated with personal hygiene, so it is considered highly inappropriate to touch communal food or utensils with the hand you use for eating.
So you serve yourself with the left and eat with the right.
Exactly. Furthermore, it's vital to finish everything on your plate. Wasting food is seen as profoundly disrespectful to the food itself and the effort it took to prepare it.
And if we move to China, the philosophy shifts heavily toward honoring hierarchy and group harmony, right?
Definitely. In China, Confucian values of filial piety and respect for elders physically manifest at the dining table. The seating arrangements are deliberate. The host or the guest of honor must take the first bite before anyone else can begin.
Oh, wow.
And when tea is poured, the eldest person is served first and the youngest is served last. It's a physical demonstration of respect. And regarding the tools themselves, chopsticks have strict rules. You never pierce food with them like a spear, and you never ever stand them upright in a bowl of rice.
Because it visually resembles funeral incense, right? That is an association you absolutely want to avoid at a celebratory dinner party.
Exactly. It evokes death and mourning. It's considered highly offensive and bad luck.
What about Korea?
In South Korea, age dictates the entire flow of the meal. The eldest starts, and drinks are served and received with 2 hands to show respect, poured in descending order of age. And crucially, to preserve social harmony. If you're offered the last piece of food from a communal dish, it's considered very rude to refuse it. You must accept it graciously.
It's just fascinating. The core human goal is always the same, showing respect and maintaining group cohesion, but the physical actions required to prove that respect are completely opposite depending on where you are on the globe.
Absolutely.
But no matter what country you are in, every single meal eventually reaches the final and often most anxiety-inducing part of the experience, paying the bill.
The dreaded check.
Yeah.
And this is where tipping comes in, which our sources universally highlight as an absolute minefield for travelers and language learners alike.
So what does this all mean in practice? If you're listening to this and breaking out in a cold sweat about how much money to leave on the table, let's summarize the big regional differences so you're prepared.
Let's start with the United States, where tipping is not an optional bonus for good service. It is a legally entrenched part of the economic system. Because of the tipped minimum wage laws, servers literally rely on your tip to survive.
Right. So what's the standard there?
The expectation is 15 to 20% of the pre-tax bill. It's so deeply expected that a recent survey noted 92% of Americans always or often tip at sit-down restaurants. Not tipping in the U.S. isn't just seen as stingy, it's seen as actively stealing the server's wages.
But then you cross the Atlantic to the UK, and the economic philosophy completely changes, so the pressure drops.
Right. In the UK, service staff receive a standard national minimum wage regardless of tips. So a tip returns to its original meaning, a bonus for good service. The standard there is closer to 10 to 12.5%.
Okay, that's a bit lower.
However, and this is a massive safeguard for the anxious traveler, you must look at your bill carefully. Many places in the UK and Europe will automatically add a service charge to the total. If that is printed on the receipt, you do not need to leave an additional tip.
That is the ultimate takeaway for Europe. Check the receipt. Look for the words service charge or gratuity included before you accidentally double tip out of sheer panic.
And if you travel to Japan, South Korea, or China, the philosophy shifts again. You have to put your wallet away after paying the base price.
It's no tipping at all.
In those cultures, great service is expected as a baseline standard. It's a point of professional pride. Leaving extra money on the table can cause immense confusion, and in some cases, it can even be seen as an insult. It implies that the employer doesn't pay them enough, or that they're a charity case.
It's just amazing. In New York, you deeply offend the waiter if you don't tip. In Tokyo, you offend them if you do. It perfectly illustrates why understanding these scripts is about so much more than vocabulary. It's about cultural fluency.
Exactly. The words get you in the door, but the cultural understanding is what allows you to actually enjoy the meal.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started by climbing the politeness ladder, learning to unlock the English ordering script with perfectly fitted keys like I'd like and please.
Yeah.
We navigated the corporate walled gardens of Starbucks cup sizes and learned how to drop the polite act and directly communicate a severe allergy.
We also looked at the silent language of the table, the 800-year psychological journey of accepting the fork, the strict rules of napkins at elbows, and how these ancient concepts of Renaissance civility still govern our corporate dinners to prevent the primal fear of social exclusion.
And finally, we traveled from the right-hand dining hygiene of India to the strict harmony-preserving age hierarchies of Korea, ending with the absolute global chaos that is tipping etiquette. But beneath all of it, whether you are dining in London, Los Angeles, or Seoul, eating out is ultimately about connection.
It really is.
It's about breaking bread with others and sharing a moment of human community.
The rules, no matter how complex or contradictory they seem, are just the framework that allows that connection to happen smoothly and respectfully.
But here is a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over the next time you go out to eat, whether it's for a fancy dinner or a quick burger. We are currently seeing a massive rise in automated AI-driven ordering systems.
Oh, absolutely.
You pull up to a drive-thru or use an app or tap a kiosk in a restaurant, and there is no human server on the other end. As these screens and machines increasingly replace human waiters, will the entire politeness script of saying I'd like and please eventually disappear entirely from the English language?
Because the machine certainly doesn't care if you say I want.
Right. Or are our 800-year-old deeply ingrained manners so powerful, so hardwired into our psychology that we will find ourselves instinctively saying thank you to the machines?
That is a truly fascinating question. A collision of ancient etiquette and future technology.
Something to chew on while you digest today's lesson. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and we will catch you on the next one.